Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Limitless Women podcast. I'm Gina, your natural holistic mystic, transformational coach, certified facilitator of women's circles, workshop leader, retreat creator, and keynote speaker dedicated to all aspects of women's empowerment. This podcast is about letting your light shine. It's a real space for real conversation, raw truths and bold transformations. We're here to shift the narrative and break barriers, bridging the gap between women and men, fostering deeper understanding, compassion, and unity. Today's guest, I'm very honoured to introduce, is Mussah. She is a public keynote speaker known for transformative dialogue and promoting positive relationships between public and the private sector. She's passionate about advocating for women's empowerment and cultural diversity. She's a wonderful wife and mother of two beautiful children. She's currently building a creative digital presence through Savannah Art. And she is also my co-facilitator on Black Parents Venting Room.
Oh.
Welcome to the show. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get going?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. So, as you said, my name is Mussah Molife, and I am. All those things are correct in terms of I'm a public speaker, certified public speaker. I work very hard to build relationships with people, both in my work as a business analyst in the public and private sector, as well as building relationships with other people and making sure that I have that diversity and empowering women by showing them opportunities, by bigging them up, talking about what their experience is like, they're like mentoring, just being a sounding board for their ideas and making sure that they have somewhere that they can feel that they can talk about what they want to do and shine their own light as well. So, I mean, I'm all those things. And yes, I do have two beautiful children, a daughter who's 16. So we are working through the teenage years as well as prepare for GCSEs, and then my son who's 11, so he's got his SATs as well this year, but he's an avid footballer, so we've got to balance both the education as well as the football, which he is passionate about. So yeah, that is me in a small nutshell.
Fantastic. And I love that you already work on transformation and communication and bridging a gap between the public and the private sector, because I think we can really draw on a lot of that for what we're going to talk about today, because one of the things that I've come to see in social media, in the public space anyway, is that there is a narrative playing out that men and women don't get on very well. We're all, men are anti-women, women are anti-men. All sorts of stories around all women. You'll hear people say all women do this or all men do this, and really get stuck in their ways. And I think for me, this podcast is hopefully going to change that narrative slightly and show that actually there are women out there that don't think all men are bad, that there are women out there like yourself, happily married, in relationships, making stuff work. And actually there is a way to bridge that gap. And it's not about us closing off and blaming anyone. It's about taking responsibility.
Most definitely.
Yeah, so I've got a couple of questions that I like to ask my guests. There's a fair, I pick and choose which ones, but they kind of center around getting different viewpoints. So there's no right or wrong answer, really. It's just your personal opinion or your views from your knowledge of, working with people to communicate. But before we get into those questions, can you tell me what inspires you the most, and how you integrate that inspiration into your daily life and things that you do?
So my children inspire me the most. I remember after my son was born, I went back to work, and I was working with a staff staff committee, and we introducing yourselves, and the first thing I said, what really inspires you and keeps you going, and it is my children. And I think in terms of, they just change the way that you see things in life. Um, I'm lucky enough to have a boy and a girl, so I get to see it from both perspectives. And I don't take that for granted. I also am very lucky that my kids are very loving and very caring, and they have been able uh, to 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 have to show a nurturing side to them. Not always in terms towards me as their parent, but in terms of just, you know, I can proudly say if they go outside, I will be happy that they can hold their own, speak their own, and do the right thing when need be. So yeah, so that is the inspiration. And I think in terms of, for me to grow, I need to be able to show them that anything is possible. No
Mm.
matter what starting point that you are, you can make a change, you can make a difference. And that's the inspiration that they have given me, to say, okay, yes, it's not where I want to be, but if I keep on going, and I telling them, you just keep on going, you just take one step at a time, it will work out in the end. But also being clear in terms of what those goals are that you want to achieve. And it's not about money or anything else, but it's about happiness. It's about the laughter, the smiles, the memories that you can create that allow me to be inspired, to say, well, okay, if we do this, we'll have a memory that we'll have, um, and we can go from there. We have something that connects us. So yeah, that's what inspires me.
That's beautiful, and I love what you said about that they are, when they go out, how they are doing well because of how they are, and it's not always necessarily with us. I
Yeah.
think that when we have any kind of relationship, we are different sides of people
Mhm.
to everybody, aren't we? And
Yes.
sometimes I was just thinking about that in terms of men and women and how we communicate and stuff.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we're moved by the tide of opinion. So that can make us think certain ways, but actually who we are at the core of us is very individual. And
Mm.
thinking about what we want before we go into making assumptions on things, we have to think from who we are, who are
Mm.
we when we're around our closest people, and the building blocks that we put in with our children, take them outside, like how you just said, that they go outside and they be these different people, not different
Yeah.
people, but they're more solid in their maybe their principles, or maybe have some more compassion or whatever it is. And how when we take on a stance um, around our children that is negative around the
Mm.
opposite sex, we kind of program in them to then go out and reinforce these things. But what
Yes.
you just said is so important about the way that you raise them at home and the way that we communicate. We often don't think about how we're communicating. We don't see how
Mm.
we are relating to each other. And I think
Mm.
for your children, a boy and a girl, which, as you said, is really ideal because they both get to see a really good demonstration of a working relationship,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
some of us haven't, and many children these days are not really seeing that.
Mm.
So yeah, I really appreciate what you're saying then. So this is something I would like to ask, and I don't know whether this applies to when you are doing your work with public sector and
Yeah.
the private sector, because I am imagining, and correct me if I'm wrong, that in the
Mm.
private sector there's quite a lot of men.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And in the
Mm.
public sector, would you say there's more women in the public sector than in the private sector, or is that not so?
So it depends in terms of, I think in the public sector there is a balance in terms
Mm,
of men and women, especially at the higher
mm,
levels. In other private sector organizations, I've never noticed that has been a difference in terms of men and women. I have been lucky enough to be in environments where there is a slight balance. I think the area where I work, it's quite telling. So I used to be in learning development, and HR, and that's very much female heavy. So there's a different feel and experience that you get by working with a lot of women in that environment. But at the same time, I've worked in other environments where there is very male dominated, in terms of not just the people that I was working with, but also the people I was providing services to. It's very male dominated. But I think a lot of it has to do with personality as well, in terms of how you engage with different men and different women. Some I see myself as a I feel like I can easily talk to men in a different way. So I've had really good male mentors in the work environment, and they have shown and appreciated me in terms of moving forward, and they've been very compassionate in terms of the way that they've done that. I didn't necessarily experience it in the same way with women, though there are some women who have been there for me and expressed that, to help me move forward. But in terms of where I've gotten my most support has been with male managers, in that respect.
That's interesting. That's interesting. So, right. So my question was going to be, what's a misconception about women? But I'm going to ask you this. What's a misconception about men that you think we need to address to bridge the gap in communication between genders? Because you have you seem to have a good relationship with men, working with them in these high-end jobs. So what's the misconception, do you think?
I don't think there's anything about a misconception. I think is your personal experience. There are men out there who I will not get on with because I don't like the way they behave. They don't treat people properly, and it's not just about how they treat women. It's just how they treat and interact with people in general. I'm very much a person who believes that you can tell the character of a person in terms of how they treat others, even those below them, or where they have power over them. So there's no misconception per se in terms of men. It's just how you see them and how they treat others. If you have somebody who is very nice to you but very horrible to the cleaner, you will have a perception about them. Yes, they may be nice to you, and you would want to say, "Oh, keep them on your good side and make sure that you use that to your advantage." But for me as a overall person, I would never be able to trust them in that fact that they don't share those values in terms of everybody is equal. So they are they are not necessarily having the relationship with me that is based on truth. It's more of a transactional. So there's nothing in terms of, for me, there's no misconception. It's just understanding human nature. And understanding what they go through. I currently work a lot with policemen, and obviously you have this because I have this concept before I work with them, that because as a Black woman, a Black parent, and as a Black person, there is an experience that you have when you go along with in terms of working with the police. But when I've actually sat down and talked to those who I actually work with, it's breaking that barrier to understanding that it's the role that they play in their job is not the role that they play as a person. And because they are always there to help, wanting to help other people, both in their day-to-day work and also as their role as as supporting other staff members or other policemen, you see that there's a human side to them. Obviously, there will be some people that I will see from their behavior and their character towards me that I can suggest that they don't actually, we're not going to get along. That's just your behavior is not doesn't align to my point of view and my experience. But I always give you the benefit on a doubt, unless otherwise you behave differently. And once you behave in differently in that way, then that puts you in a category that some people will then suggest, oh, it puts you in a box that allows you to stay there. But I always truly believe that for the relationship between men and women is very different in terms of where the individual is starting from, in terms of how to develop that relationship. And for me, it's always been a way in terms of learning and um, and understanding others, rather than being a transactional relationship to get something from somebody, because nobody can give me what I can't give myself. So it's never going to be in terms of that way, that type of relationship.
Yeah. And you're making me think about when you're saying taking people as individuals, it made me think of something in regards to men and women. When we start relationships with somebody, I mean, you're happily married, so you've ticked that box off. But for those of us that aren't, and we meet somebody new, and we may have had some bad experiences, just like
Yeah.
what you're saying, there will be you've met some police officers that are really cool, and you know that if you met some other ones, they've got different personalities and so on and so forth.
Mm.
Now, the same thing with relationships, I would imagine. When we meet somebody new, it's very easy for us to put them into this basket of all men.
Yeah.
Last man I went out with did this, the last. Da, 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 da. So then we end up becoming a bit anti them
Yes.
and blaming them for things that they haven't actually done. And I think the key thing that you mentioned there was taking people on individual basis and a clean slate, really, until they've done whatever they've done. I mean, not until, I mean, assuming that they ever do, because we
Yeah.
react differently with different people. So just because, somebody had a negative relationship with one guy doesn't mean to say that he won't go on to have a better relationship, or that he wouldn't have done some growing in between and then gone on to be able to have a more successful relationship, be more built up his emotional intelligence. We were all young once, we all made mistakes. So I really like that point you made about treating people as individuals and taking them, you can't take everybody in one. So how do you how do you personally navigate misunderstandings or communication barriers in your relationships? It could be romantic, professional, or personal relationships.
I'm not very good at that. It's one of my weaker points. Um, if something happens, I don't tend to go back and necessarily try and fix it. I just try and move on, um, and learn for myself in terms of how that would work for me. And also sometimes it is in terms of that the other person as well, whether it is worth um fixing it for that relationship to stand.
Yeah.
There is, in terms of a work relationship, because you have to continue to work with those people, you have to come to understanding about where you are. But I always try and keep it as professional. In terms of friendship, and partners, I think it's slightly different, because for me, I you come to a point where you start questioning, is this how much is this feeding me in terms of nurturing that other side of me, that self side of me, in terms of going forward. And when I say in terms of doing that, there are people that you will have a misunderstanding, and you are able to come to an understanding about it, but you can tell that the relationship has changed. um so that in terms of the things aren't going to be the same going forward, and you end up finding that you're on the same road, but on opposite sides of the road.
Yeah.
And when you get to the end of that road, do you cross over to continue down that parallel road, or you go your separate ways? And sometimes without even just knowing that that's happened, because just somebody's just taken that right, you being focusing going forward, and not realizing that they're no longer with you. So there's a silence in some of those relationships. And I think, um, for me, I've noticed and realized that sometimes changes in relationships don't necessarily come as a big bang. You just walk parallel to each other until somebody turns right, or and doesn't even notify you. They don't cross your path again. They don't, you look around, you look across the road, and they're no longer there. And it's not just physically, but emotionally, as well as caring, you know. And that's where it is for me different in terms of my relationship with my relationship with men. On a emotional level is slightly different. Yes, I will be happy to talk to a man on that non-relationship level, because I know I can take them as an individual. But I think when you start talking about the intimate relationships where you have with men, for me, I find that a very different type of relationship and a very different experience, that sometimes you do start putting people in that box, and you do start cutting away, and the communication does change, deteriorates, and sometimes it doesn't come back.
Yeah, yeah. And I've always thought about things like that in terms of long-term good friendships and relationships. Um, some survive and some just don't. And
Yeah.
it's about being able to let go. Nobody says that you have to stay friends with everybody. Sometimes we think that bridging a gap in communication means that no matter what, we're going to communicate with somebody and we're going to be this or that to somebody, but that doesn't necessarily happen.
No.
Sometimes bridging the gap can be about you having a deeper understanding that your paths are no longer
Yes.
aligned,
Yeah.
and it's not necessarily essential that you keep communicating with some people. Communication, no action is an action.
Yeah, exactly.
So if somebody's not really, if somebody's just fixated on, say, like arguing with you or finding fault in everything, then maybe you will decide that you just choose not to be around that energy
Yeah.
so
Yes.
much. And I think that that's fair enough to say. And I did earlier on, you were saying how you had women, you'd worked with women before, and those relationships, working relationships, weren't as I don't know, weren't as positive. Would you say, is that the right
Yeah.
word?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, as the relationships with men. And I find
Yeah.
that interesting too, because you would think that, and I've had that experience too. A lot of us women will have had experiences with other women where that something's just not gelled, and you
Yeah.
won't know why, because you're not in
Yeah.
that person's head. And it's strange how much worse we can be to each other. So the sun's really decided to come in, so my lighting's got to spot.
It
But
looks beautiful though.
but um um when we find ourselves in situations like that, it's a common misconception, I think, for women to assume that because you've got a woman there, she's gonna have your back.
Yeah.
So you might think you're going to the woman, but actually a man might have a different approach to the whole situation that may
Yes.
not be as emotionally charged or whatever. So you might
Yeah.
get a more straightforward conversation with them, because they're not, we have hormones as well. Women, our hormones are just, they just carry us all over the place sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that can be downplayed a lot in society,
Yes.
because we see it as, a woman has a bleed once a month, 1 week in a month, and we think that's the week that you just have to avoid her. But there's a lot going on with our hormones all through the year.
Oh gosh,
Some
yes.
people are perimenopause, some people are menopause, some people are not, but it doesn't matter. Some have PMS or whatever. So catch a woman on the wrong day, and then you're going to get the experience of her that is not necessarily true to her heart. Let's just say,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes, of course,
So
of course.
us all together when we're all hormonal like that,
Yeah.
actually, it can be quite a stressful situation.
Yeah.
It,
I mean,
mm,
what I would add to that is also I have been in situations where relationships with women have started really badly, obviously because they were going through stresses and changes, but we've now become great friends. So I still hold on to that hope and understanding that actually all is not lost. You just have to put a little bit of effort. And I think that's where a lot of the times this whole misconception about developing relationships, people, as you said earlier, you're not always going to be friends at this all the time. Things change. The type of friendship you have changes. Those experience changes. But it's it's whether in terms of understanding. Even a lot of my friends, I'm a very much an introvert. First of all, I'm very much an introvert. I'll text once in a while. You hardly catch me on the phone. I'm not that type of friend. I'm not that I'll call you up every week and talk to you about it, about life in that respect. I did have a relationship like that before, and when it broke down, it really hurt me. So I've never gone back to that way of life. But I like the idea that if I have a friendship, if I meet up with you and we haven't spoken to for about months, we can just pick up where we left off. There's no recrimination, say, oh, you don't call, you don't do that, you don't do that. I'm of that opinion. If we catch up and there is something important that we need to work together on, we can still do that. But in terms of the everyday life, I understand you're busy. You've got your own life, you've got work, you've got kids, you you just want to relax, you want to do that self-care. But I'm now learning that just meeting people where they are is very important.
Yes, and that is a really top thing, I think, meeting people where they are. This is something I didn't learn until recent years, if I'm honest. I always judged people by the gaps that I saw in their character that didn't gel with me in some way, and I would then make things about them, this is that, and the other. But sometimes you just have to realize that this is where that person's at, and it's not actually about me. It's about whatever's going on for them. So really, I get that is such a crucial thing. And also what you said, which hit home a bit, is this thing of meeting somebody, and because they say first impressions, right? First impressions, and people will hold on to that forever.
Oh yeah.
But the problem with first impressions is that they can lie to you too.
Of course.
Because if you meet somebody in that first instant and they're in the bad space, what you're going to receive from them is not true, which is why you still have to be open, like what you said, and give people a chance. And I think because then when you catch them in a different energy space, they're different people and you vibe on something, you might find that you connect on something different. But why I find that relevant in terms of this conversation is that with men and women, sometimes when we meet each other, first of all, we do judge each other from the first instance, but we're forgetting that sometimes we're coming in that first instance with baggage from the past. So if we're coming with that baggage from the past, and then we're using that bit, I would say, incorrect evidence, because we're using evidence on someone else against someone else, and then now we're judging them, then we can make all sorts of assumptions about each other. And I think that's what sometimes men and women do. They've got their backup each side, and they meet, and then that's the bit, that the first bit, and then they say, well, the first time I met them, this is what they were like. They're not good news. But actually that's not necessarily the case. And if you've developed boundaries and stuff for yourself and know who you are, you're less likely to actually be taken in by somebody that's going to be exactly like your ex if you've done the work.
Or, I
mean,
I totally hear and understand in terms of that, the whole experience. And I think, I haven't been on a date to meet a man romantically in yonks. I've been with my partner now for over 20 years, married, going to be 15 years this year. And And I think that's one of my conscious, when I am meeting or meeting men, I know I have to behave in a certain way. I don't wear any wedding rings. I don't wear any wedding rings to say that I'm married or anything else, but I still have to put on a sort of a facade to say, well, you don't need to approach me in that way, first of all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but at the same time, there is a thing about the male and female relationship that is quite unique, that can be quite empowering, and that can be quite, liberating. And sometimes when we squeeze it into, you know, when so when you squeeze it into just having that one person, I think there's something that to be said that one person cannot satisfy all your needs.
That's true.
And the problem with male and female relationships is that sometimes nobody, the boundaries the boundaries are there, but people push against them when there's no need to. Because you at the end of the day, it's a friendship. Everything that works well starts with a friendship. You have to be able to talk, to communicate, to understand each other, to have a deeper meaning and understanding about that person as well. And whether you're with somebody long term or even short term, it has to start with that level of communication. Yes, there can be, you come in with that, all the passion and the stars and the eyes and everything else. But I don't know if I'm going off the point here, but
No, I hear what you're saying, because like what I'm kind of grasping from what you're saying, when there's boundaries and people don't need to push against them, sometimes we've built some boundaries that are there to protect us because of past hurts.
Yeah.
So you can't judge someone by their boundaries, but you can respect them.
Yes.
You must respect them, because at the end of the day, yeah, there's all this love at first sight and all this love, but trust has to be earned.
Oh, yes.
Trust has to be earned, and you can't just meet somebody and trust them. If you've got boundaries, then in fact, someone shouldn't push against someone else's boundaries, because that's for me, that's a good thing, that somebody knows themselves well enough to have boundaries and be clear on those. And actually, boundaries, like fences, can be built higher and they can be taken down lower. They can be made wider. Do you get what I mean? So a boundary isn't necessarily saying no to everything, to everybody.
Yeah.
But a boundary is saying that this is stuff that I know about me, and I just need to protect me, but also help you understand me better because of these boundaries. So I totally get what you're saying about boundaries don't need to be pushed. People push against boundaries when they don't need to. And I think that's how some conversations occur, because someone has a boundary and then they go, well, why are you like this? And people start asking questions as if to say you have to justify yourself, which, why?
And I think I think that's what puts a lot of people, and I'm thinking about in terms of my younger self, that puts you into situations where somebody, you know that this is not what you want, but because that person is always pushing and questioning and going past those boundaries, you end up in a state where you don't even want to look at men in that way, because you're just thinking that sometimes that's where, as you said, the past experience that you go for. But I've also now, as an older self person, I also realized that actually, if you have solid boundaries and a solid understanding of self, and you say, look, this is who I am, this is how I behave, and this is what I want. If that's not what you see in terms of going forward, then that's fine. We go our separate ways. Because I know that in terms of an enriched life, is having multiple types of people around you, both men and women, to be part of your life, a part of your growth. But when you don't feel safe and you don't trust to be in the company of that person, that they will see that this boundary shifting, then it just makes you come to this conclusion, oh, everybody's like that.
Yeah, and I think that this is hitting on something here for me, because I'm thinking about the boundaries that you mentioned, and how, like, I remember being on this talk show, this radio show, and one of the questions the men were asking, or several men had kind of called in about, was that they said, why is it that when a woman's older, and you go to date her, why does she have these little boundaries in place? Because she's obviously already been intimate, she's a grown woman, she's got children. But what they were failing to see was that cushion of space that was required for the woman to start to feel relaxed and safe, and, as you said, build a friendship with you before getting intimate. Because just because a woman is older and getting into the relationship, dating or whatever, it doesn't mean to say that she hasn't learned from past of not maybe having the same boundaries. So now she has boundaries because she doesn't really want to waste time saying yes to people that she doesn't want to. And, you know, when we were younger, we could get pressured into like, do this, do that. Oh, come on, you know, I really like you, and this, that, and the other, and all the words that men and boys tend to say to kind of get you to the spot they want. But really and truly, do they even want that to happen? Because in the same breath that I heard men complaining about women taking too long to get intimate, I also then heard, you know, women are not, you know, maybe derogatory terms about women who are more free with their intimacy, and who don't mind, you know. And I'm not even judging them. I'm just saying that in the same breath, I was hearing communication about that. So it's kind of like, for women, it's like, okay, so I want to just have some boundaries and just take my time, or I'm a woman and I don't care and I want to just be free. Either way, there's always a judgment. So it really goes back to what you were saying earlier on about taking people as individuals and taking time, I think, with people.
And just to add to that, because one of the things that I have found, because of those judgments, and not understanding self, when I was younger, you sort of fell into relationships that didn't nurture and grow and offer growth. You went in to say, okay, if I'm going to be intimate with you, I have to be with you. You have to be my boyfriend. We have to be this, we have to be that, blah, blah, blah. And it puts so much pressure on being young and just understanding just to be free. Intimacy is part of that individuality that people need to come to understand and accept, that through different stages of life, you will want things more, less, none at all. You know, if you're lucky to have that partner who is able to satisfy that in that need, and it's a love match. But then there's sometimes that love isn't there and it is just physical. But we can't go around to hold that against a person going forward. Because you end up damaging yourself. Because you're carrying around a judgment that you don't own. And you're damaging that other person because they are always trying to hide, because they know if they say, they're going to be judged.
There's so much. I think there's so much. A lot of the issues people have are based on judgments. And their judgments aren't necessarily true. And it's just this work on self, what you mentioned, you know, getting to know yourself, so that it doesn't matter what other people think about you, because you know who you are.
Yes.
And you don't fall into that category of trying to please or do something for somebody because you're trying to feel wholer. Or, you know, as I say, you can't get everything from one person. So having a multitude of friends and different connections, male and female, will
Yeah.
suit you better in life, because you'll get different perspectives, and you'll get to see that maybe your way of thinking might not be the only way. Maybe there is another way, or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
And I just think we need to spend more time really just getting to know ourselves and looking at people with curiosity as
Yeah.
opposed to with judgment.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like that little bit in terms of, you know, what you just said in terms of the whole friendship, and letting go of that whole the judgment as well. Because what I find in now, as we are going through this scary process of global change in a way, um the distance between men and women is getting further, whereas we had reached a place where we had understanding. We could be in the same room and have
Mm,
that discussion, and be friends, and be um, able to understand other points of view. And I don't think it was ever one-sided. I think men learn from women, women learn from men, and not to say men learned how to be men and men learned how to be women. They just learned to know themselves better and understand um, an individual, uh,
mm,
and understand what an individual needs, and
mm.
to be able to change it up when necessary. And I
Yeah.
think now, in terms of when I look in terms of the relationships that I have, um, in terms of outs, men outside my family cohort, because when you start going outside of your family in terms of being friendship, it makes it, there is a I'm trying not to mince my words, but it's a it becomes uncomfortable. People look at you differently. That judgment account said, why are you friends with somebody outside your marriage? Why are you friends with somebody who is not a family member? Why are you friends with that person? You can't be friends with that person. I can, because I know my boundaries. They know my boundaries, and we have experience that you cannot give me as a woman, or
Yeah.
you cannot give me as a husband, because we may not necessarily share those same things, you know. um and I do understand some people cannot keep those boundaries clear,
Mm,
in a lot of ways. So it does that there is that blurriness that comes across. But I think in general, if us as people, we just treat people out from an individual basis, just get to know them as an individual. If they offer something that allows you to grow and be, then allow it to be. If they don't, they don't. And if you want to feel that you want to get into a relationship that is more than that, just that friendship, then you have to make sure that that's what something that you want, and go for it. I have no expectation in terms of what a human being has to offer for me, because at the same time, there will always be men and women out there who portray to themselves to be something, and they aren't what they portray themselves to be.
yeah.
And I
That.
think I think that's where it then becomes a bit messy, and then we start putting those categories in. All men are
Mm,
like this, all men are like that, because
yeah.
people aren't truthful.
And that's a really poignant note, actually, because I was just thinking about the dating world, and I
Mm,
was just thinking about the lockdowns and how everything became online. And so now people are when you get to go online, you
yeah,
can create a superhero.
of course,
You
of
can
course.
create the most fantastic human being ever. And I mean, now that you've got like chat GPT and all that, and I'm not anti it, by the way, but I'm just saying there's a lot of creative tools out there that can make you write amazing stuff, right?
Yes.
So we've gone onto this online place, and there's all the social media about what you're supposed to be like, not supposed to be like, la 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 la. So people portraying themselves, these ultra egos. And then when you meet them, the real person isn't like that, but then they have to stand up to it. And but what starts happening? What a mess. That's why I think the social element of connecting is so important, and it's still important today. No matter how much technology we have, we will always need to meet face to face and get each other's energy and actually spend time together. You can't do that. You can't do that by a couple of texts and whatever it is online. You have to go on a few dates, and they don't have to be expensive. They're just spending time together so that you can see this other person's personality, I guess.
Of course.
So yeah, and I see what you mean though. And I think that is really why we get these men versus, you know, women narratives, because men, you know, men will put out an ad, maybe what type of woman they're looking for, traditional. Woman will put out whatever she thinks traditional. None of us have lived in traditional times, by the way. This is what makes me laugh, right? This is actually what makes me laugh the most about the way that we all expect what a traditional man should be. We have not, in our generation, lived in those traditional times when women stayed at home all the time, when women couldn't vote, when women didn't have any rights, when women were bound by their husbands. So therefore they were at home cooking, cleaning and having babies and making dinners for their husbands. And men were out to work, and they had lifetime jobs, and they worked until they got to whatever age and got their watches. We're not in that time anymore. So we have to rein it back again. And it goes back to what you're saying, get to know people as individuals, because how the world has shaped all of us differently to be who we are today. It's worth learning that about that person. Isn't it? Because then that's how you get to know a bit more. And I'm talking, this is I'm enjoying talking to you too much, and I actually have to keep an eye on the time.
No, it's been a great conversation.
Yeah. So I tell you what, I'm going to ask you this. What does letting your light shine mean to you?
Oh gosh. I don't know. To be honest, it's something that is part of my ongoing journey of self-discovery. Some days it's, you know, being really good at my job, smiling at work, enjoying my work, and being a good problem solver. So if I can solve a problem, it is. Sometimes it's being a good friend, being there for other people, helping and supporting them, and doing those things. Other times it's being a good mother, going through the day without shouting at the kids. You know, that's my light, because that means we have had a good day. But at the core of it, I'm still not sure what it is to me.
Sounds like it's all of those things. I like to ask everyone that question, because a lot of people do what you do. They're like, oh, they have to think about it, because we spend enough time. If I said to you, what are the 3 things that you really can't stand about yourself? You'd be like, well, number 1, you'd go to 5. Do you get what I mean?
Yeah.
But when you ask someone what is it that lets your light shine, unless they've been doing some work on it recently, they will come a bit unstuck.
Yeah, most definitely.
In my women's circle, every week I ask them to give me what they value about themselves. And they have to find something. And they have to tell me what their wins are in that week. And there's a couple of other things I do. But it's really good, because it's a focal point at least once a week. Where they can actually dig deep and find some good stuff. I really am. On my necklace, it says gratitude. I really do believe in having gratitude in life. And that isn't just for the big things. It's the things that are like what you just mentioned, having a nice conversation with a friend, or having a good day at home where you haven't had to shower. People don't pay enough attention to those little things. That's still beautiful.
Yeah.
Do you get what I mean? And that does help your light to shine, because it feels good. You feel good, and that's where your light. That's, I think, the energy of your light shining is that. It's not some big like vazam. I don't know if that's even the right word, but it's not some big word, and then all of a sudden everything's perfect.
Yeah.
It could be a host of little things.
Yeah.
And sometimes they say to me, someone will say, actually, I'm quite resilient, or I'm good at doing so, and it just gets you to start thinking about what it is that lets your light shine. And there's a multitude of things, and there's no actual right answer. It's whatever, it's individual to everybody. So we've come into the end, and okay, your closing reflection. What is your quote that you either live by, or you inspires you, or something that you repeat often to people?
So my quote is something I inspire to. So it's by Maya Angelou. And simply because her experience, her life, I read her when I started reading her when I was 13. So got an experience of her life, but also it's sort of helped me focus in terms of the type of woman I wanted to be. And what she says is, my mission in life is not merely to survive, but to thrive, and to do so with some passion, some compassion, some humor, and some style.
I love that. I love that. I'll have to get you to, I couldn't write that quick enough, so I will have to get it from you so I can add it. And that is really wonderful. I love that, It's so true. I think I've read one of those. I think I've read that. It's not about just surviving, is it? It's about thriving. Life is about living it fully, and just there's so much more to life than we really give that we can take from it even.
Of course. I mean, so a lot of people say we only use 4% of our brain power most of the days. There's so much, and it's like the rest of the whole world. We're only living on 1% of it in terms of it. There's so much more to experience out there, and it's just breaking through those barriers that stop you from actually living that life full of passion, full of compassion, surviving, thriving. Making that difference.
100%, 100%. So thank you so much. But before we go off, do you want to talk about anything that you're doing anymore at the moment, any projects you're working on, and where people can find you?
Yeah, so as you said earlier, I am working on a social media project for my dad's book, Peter Molife. He wrote a really beautiful story about Ariza, charting the migration of a Zimbabwean young woman coming to England to work in the 1970s, and just reflecting on that period in terms of her being here while Zimbabwe, previously Rhodesia, was going through its war of independence. And came out in 2020, but we're now it's now its 5th year anniversary in February. And we just want people to be able to get it. It's available on Amazon. It's Ariza, ERIZA. You can find us on Instagram at Ariza Book, Ariza.book, as well as Facebook as well. And then I've got my own personal project, digital art project that I'm working on as well, which is called Savannah Art. And that's at Savannah Art 1798 on Instagram. And my friend once told me that my art teacher said, "Oh, you can't draw." But I love art. I love art. I love that creativity that art brings. So the digital art side allows me to bring to life my ideas, really focusing on African art, street art, that bringing out a different style in terms of how we depict Africa and Africans in it. So I've done a series on ballerinas, in terms of set in coastal backgrounds and those sort of works. So as time goes on, I'll be putting those more out on my Instagram, and they'll be available as well. Yeah, so that's it.
Fantastic. I'm so looking forward to it. Okay, so what I'm going to say to everybody watching, if you go into the description of this podcast, you will see all of the information that Mussah has just given us, links to get the book, links to follow her art, Savannah Art, and all manner of things that Mussah is doing. And if you have enjoyed this particular episode, please like, love it, share it, retweet it, redo whatever you need to do. But please subscribe to the channel, love and like. Thank you so much, Mussah. Looking forward to seeing you in Black Parents Venting Room.
Yes, brilliant. I'm looking forward to it as well.
Thank you.
Thanks.